Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Sophie.
And we asked the question, which style of clothing do you prefer? So in this project, we were researching response bias by asking different people their opinions on our question. We chose this topic to research which fashion trends are preferred more within our areas because we thought this was an interesting topic to cover. Fashion is always changing, and we thought that it would be insightful to see whether people like hypebeast more or designer more, and we thought it would be cool to compare the two based on our data.
So for data collection, we obtained your data in a manner of systematically sampling at the Planning House Mall. In doing so, I was wearing clothing pertaining to the designer aspect, and she was wearing clothing pertaining to the hypebeast aspect. We asked every fifth person that came by the same identical question, which style of clothing do you prefer? Where we continue to do the same thing until we both have attained 50 subjects each, making the whole experiment 100 subjects in total. We made sure to ask these questions in an area where no clothing advertisements were displayed.
So for my part in this project, I wore a hoodie from a well-known hypebeast brand called Off-White. And I stood in front of one of the round one entrances and began asking people whether they preferred what I was wearing or what Sophie was wearing, and Sophie was standing across from me in the same entrance. And she was wearing a designer brand. In the end, I concluded that 67% of the sample size preferred designer brands and 33% preferred hypebeast brands. However, I believe that this may have been biased because the people I asked may have chosen or agreed or liked what I was wearing more just so they wouldn't hurt my feelings.
For my part, on the other hand, I wore a sweater from Gucci, a well-known designer brand, as well as carrying a Louis Vuitton bag. I stood in front of the other side of the entrance across from Juliet and also began to ask what style of clothing they preferred, gesturing to my clothing and Juliet's as an example. I concluded with my data that most people prefer designer, with 71% with designer and 29% hypebeast. I do believe though that my data might have been biased because people probably wouldn't say the other type of clothing when I'm wearing my type of clothing, and they wouldn't want to offend me by choosing the other.
So in conclusion, we found that the sample size in our population prefers designer clothing over hypebeast clothing, and you can see that by our pie charts here. We both realized that there was a slight change in results when we wore the different styles. If we could have changed something about this experiment, it would have been to conduct this in a more secluded area because it took a very long time to wait for each of us to wait for 50 different people and get their opinions. Overall, we had a lot of fun gathering the data, and it was really fun participating and conducting everything in real life. Thank you for listening.
We hope you feel better, Ms. Shelton.
And we'll see you